Hello and welcome to this special episode of our podcast on Global Forgiveness Day. As we mark Global Forgiveness Day, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on one of the most powerful and liberating human experiences forgiveness. It's something we all struggle with at some point in our lives. Yet, when embraced sincerely, it has the potential to heal not just relationships, but also our own minds and heart. I'm your host, Ma'am Shalmain, representing Ambrosian Well-Being, an organization dedicated to promoting mental wellness and emotional resilience. Joining me today is someone I've personally seen live this value, someone who has shown through actions more than words what it means to truly forgive, they'll say. I'm so grateful he agreed to share his thoughts and experiences with us today. I take privilege in introducing Jairam Ramachandran, who is a seasoned HR professional with over 40 years of rich experience across diverse manufacturing sectors, including automobile, petroleum, petrochemicals, hospitality, construction, and packaging. Having retired as head of HR, he now contributes as a trainer, coach, mentor, OD interventionist, and HR consultant. And most importantly, during this rich tenure of his experience, I had a great opportunity to work with him close to 13 years. We welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored, Mamshal, that it's me as one of the podcast speakers. So honored.
Okay, then we dive into the show and we will start by asking you, can you share a moment, either personally or professionally, where forgiving someone felt incredibly difficult but transformative, and what helped you get there?
Mm, okay. So, uh, personal and professional, where forgiving someone felt incredibly difficult. Okay. So let me straight dive into one of my experiences from one of the organizations that I worked with. So that will make it more application based rather than just concept. So in one of the automobile major that I was working several years ago, maybe 20 years ago, and I was the head of the plant then, we had a union situation, basically stemming from an inter-union rivalry, somewhere in the mid 1990s in one of the plant that I was head of HR. So we went through a period of suspension of operations followed by a lockout. The matter went to the court and eventually we had to lift the lockout and start operations. Everything ended up and we said we'll start the operations. So in the morning, the workmen, the first shift were coming in. As they were coming in, I noticed that many of them had put their head down and they were walking in. And I didn't
Okay.
realize why they were doing that. So I just went a little later during the day and asked them, "Oh, what happened? Well, you guys came in. It was such a nice occasion that we have started the operation." They said, "नहीं साहब, तो हमारा तो हार हो गया. We lost." That
Oh.
set me, that set a trigger in me, saying that why are they saying they have lost? We have opened our plant. Everything has happened. It can't be lose-win. They can't say they have lost. We have lost too. Or
Yes.
if we allow them, all of us have come back into the plant and we have started the operation, we have won. So it is a win-win for both. So I was not able to understand why. And that's where I thought, I think if they have the feeling that they have lost and we have won, it's our job to forgive them. That was the time I just realized, let bygones be bygones. We have forgiven them. And if they thought that they had won, well, we had won too. It was a victory for both of us. So it was in fact a win-win for both that we had restarted the operation. So that thought stuck my mind that this was their way of seeking forgiveness and for what had happened. And it was also my way of acknowledging that forgiveness by making it comfortable for restarting the operation. So it was a forgiveness on both the sides. Now it was not a very incredibly difficult operation, but it was a nice forgiveness by both of us, sharing of mutual forgiveness for each other. Words not spoken, more by action. So forgiveness can be by our action too. Now, again, the next time, within a couple of months, it there was a big violence that broke out in our plant. And forgiving this time was very difficult for me because this was a violence. You have to call the law, you have to call the police. Otherwise, there can be mass destructions. This time, it decided not to forgive. And this time, we actually conducted an inquiry, and some of the people had to be terminated. Why did we have to do that? This time, there was a huge organizational crisis. There was an organizational change that had to happen. And it was very, very difficult because the organization had to be transformed. Now, if the organization needs to be transformed, then you have to go through an incredibly difficult operation. So, therefore, this time forgiveness was not an answer. So, the lesson it taught me was forgiveness is not weakness. Okay, my meekness, don't interpret it as being my weakness, or my fairness is not my meekness. And most certainly, it is not a weakness. So sometimes one has to go through a difficult operation of forgiveness and probably not forgive if there has to be a transformative operation. And sometimes you really have to forgive when you see that people are seeking and they are truly, truly sorry about it. So I think it's a two-way operation, and it goes both ways.
That sounds incredibly powerful and a reminder that forgiveness often grows from pain.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's build on that and talk a bit more about the emotional cost of holding on to resentment then. In your experience, how does holding on to resentment affect one's mental and emotional well being?
How does holding on to resentment affects one's mental and emotional well-being? Okay. So first, let's see, why does resentment happen? Let's just look at the cause. Because obviously somebody has inflicted a pain on you. So you resent because there has been a pain. And so pain is the cause and resentment is the effect. So it's a cause and effect. So pain, therefore resentment. That resentment can further lead to pain, which will further lead to resentment. So to pain, resentment, it's just a cycle. Pain is the cause and resentment is the effect. When you forgive, what happens? You can't always have pain and resentment. Somewhere you need to cut that off. Now, that cut off is the point of forgiveness. So, when you forgive, the cause disappears, thus, the effect also disappears. But when there is pain and or resentment, you are seized with a problem. There is a problem, and that problem has to be resolved. So, this is an emotional or a mental, it's a mental traumatic emotion. And yes, of course, it can lead to trauma too. Thus, your mental well-being gets disturbed. So when you forgive, just see the trauma disappears, the emotion disappears. It just takes a few minutes. Why? Because बोझ हल्का हुआ है. जब बोझ हल्का हो जाता है, you have released your pain. The moment you release your pain, your resentment goes off. So therefore, the only way, as you said, holding on to one's resentment, yes, most certainly, to my mind, affects one's mental and emotional well-being. And yeah, and I think uh, it's so beautifully said both in the New Testament and I think it's both in the New and the Old Testament. Forgive thy neighbor. So it stems from that philosophy. Forgive, and that's how you release out all your resentments and your pains from yourself.
Yes, that truly put things into perspective. Resentment can silently shape out the inner world more than we realize. With that in mind, I love your thoughts on something we often hear. There's a saying, forgive, but don't forget. What's your take on it?
Forgive, but don't forget. Uh,
Difficult.
I I don't know whether it resonates with me. I'm just wondering, how can one forgive but not forget? You see, forgiveness is like doing charity. And when you do charity, they say your left hand should not know what your right hand is doing. When you give alms, when you give charity, do you let the whole world know about it?
Absolutely not.
Then where does it remain a charity? It's a transaction.
Yeah.
Forgiveness and charity are like siblings. It's giving in both the cases. Forgive. Charity, you give. So when you give, you just forget what you've given, like charity. I mean, the beauty of charity lies in its secrecy. Once the secrecy is out, then it's a transaction. It's no. Forgiveness is same. Forgiveness is giving. When you give, you forget. So therefore, the first sentence that you wrote, forgive but don't forget, is a little
Yes.
difficult for me to digest. Likewise, it is not how much you forgive. That's not important. How the act of forgiving, that's important. Second, let me also quickly add on to it. Forgiveness has to be unconditional. It's not like a war ceasefire. You behave well. Yes, today we are declaring a ceasefire. As long as you behave well, once you start your mischief, we will take away your forgiveness. No, it is unconditional. I cannot partly forgive someone. I have to fully forgive someone. So you never have forgiveness. You say, "ठीक है, up to this point, I am forgiving you. Beyond that, I am not forgiving you." It doesn't happen that way. If you get back to your mischief, I will again withdraw. It cannot happen. Remember, forgiveness has to be always unconditional forgiveness. Like charity, you don't give charity saying that, okay, I will give you so much of charity, but if you're not utilizing, I will take away. No, you have given, that's it. So the fundamental principles of forgiveness is to give and forget. That's a very fundamental principle of forgiveness. You don't need the world to validate it. You don't need the world to know about it. And that's why when he said forgive but don't forget, doesn't really resonate with me. Forgive and truly forget. That's where the journey of forgiveness begins from.
Still, I have another question for you. Have you ever struggled to forgive yourself, and how did you navigate that journey then?
Uh, yeah, I have at times, yes. So, okay, let me share with you maybe an incident or uh, an event that has happened during the course of my uh, professional life. So, when I've had occasions to ask a person to leave, and ma'am said, you've been in the same function that when we
Yes.
work together. So, when I've had occasions to ask a person to leave or to terminate a staff, it's always been very hard. So, while doing it, I have had to mask my emotions since it was an act that I'm required to do for the larger purpose of the organization. Therefore, we all do it in HR. But once the event is complete, it becomes very tough on me, and it sets me thinking emotionally, did I really do the right thing? Organizations have zero tolerance. Organizations have zero tolerance for uh, ethics, integrity, posh. So I start asking myself uh, questions. Couldn't I have done it in an easier or a less traumatic way? Was this the only way it could have been done? Could I not have forgiven him or her? So my mind and heart have always got into this conflicting conversation often, and I found it difficult to forgive myself and visualize that I'm attracting the curse of people. I always do that. So each of these times I have struggled to forgive myself and hence failed to navigate through this psychological process, the non-congruence between the head and the heart. So the only way I finally succeed is by giving time to myself. And I think time is the best healer in all such cases where the emotions stops overplaying on you and you realize that what you did was indeed right for the larger purpose and for the larger population of an organization. You may have terminated one or two people, but the other 1,000 people still need to be safe and they are safe. And because of them, that was the reason why I did it. And I take solace from those kind of healings and time that happens during the course of such traumas and pressures that I come across in my professional life.
I think I kind of copied your, art of wearing that mask. For me, it was very, very difficult initially, and the emotional self in me came out first. But that's something I learned from you, how you could keep two things different, when it came to your personal emotions, set it apart. The need of the organization came first. Yes, it was tough, but it was a learning for me. So, if I have to ask you, then is forgiveness a decision or a process? Then, what helps sustain it when old wounds resurface? They often resurface.
Uh, yeah. So as humans, frankly, as humans, we don't decide to forgive. If it's a relationship issue with the next of kin or someone who is close and dear to you, like a friend or a colleague, then forgiveness is very extempore and it's instant. So it just comes to you. You don't have to think. You don't have to decide. आज मैं उसको forgive करूंगा. No, it happens when you just feel. But when the wound has hit you hard and the person has been grievously hurt and bruised, psychologically, mentally, physically, and further it has been existing for over a long period of time, then forgiveness does not come to you very easily. But even in such cases, as I said earlier, time is still the healer. Forgiveness also comes by lapse of time and circumstances in life change things for people. And by various changes of circumstances, you also start forgiving people. When each of them need each other, the person who has hurt you, you want to forgive. When that person also wants to come closer to you, when you want to go closer to that person, forgiveness will automatically come in. I think that's how nature has built humans. But remember, as I said earlier, forgiveness is still not a ceasefire. It's not temporary. It comes and it goes and it remains there to stay. So, is forgiveness a decision or a process? Uh, it's truly a process, not a spur of the moment decision, and it always remains that way. Yes, when what helps sustain it when old wounds heal, I think one is when your heart tells you that you have done it, when your heart tells you that you need to sustain it, not your head.
True.
The heart tells you that let bygones be bygones. That is over. And that again, time is the healer for that. So, therefore, what helps you sustain when old wounds resurface? When you ask me that question,
Yeah.
the only thing that helps you to sustain yourself is your unconditional forgiveness. Once you have unconditionally forgiven that people, then it's very difficult for even when the old wounds come back scratching you, you will not want to again take up a fight. You would still remember that forgiveness and you will say, let bygones be bygones.
That distinction is so important. And thank you for breaking that down. As we come to a close, let's talk about those who are still on the edge of beginning this journey. And finally, for anyone listening today who wants to forgive but doesn't feel ready yet, what's that one small step they could begin with?
Uh, well, I don't truly have a formula as such as a step, but yeah, what you're saying wants to forgive.
Yes, they want to forgive, but they're not ready yet. So, what is
Okay,
that one small step they can begin with? What would you recommend,
so
or in your own
wants to forgive
experience?
but doesn't feel ready.
Ready enough. What?
Yeah, ready enough. So, if he she wants to forgive, it means that he or she is ready. Okay, that's my first inference. Uh,
Okay.
I would find it difficult to say that ready to forgive, but wants to forgive, but ready not ready enough. I think if a person is wanting to forgive, the person would be ready. And I'll tell you why my reasoning for it. Forgiveness is a function of the heart. Okay? Your mind can never permit you to forgive unless your heart is ready. So your heart actually gives you a signal to the mind to forgive. So, because I always consider that these values and soft things that come as humans, they emanate from the heart. The corporate mind emanates, the corporate visualizations come from your head. Once your heart is ready to forgive, your mind automatically aligns with your heart. So that's forgiveness happens. That's how forgiveness, typically for me, it would happen. So the one small step now, since if I were to give a very formulaic kind of an equation, so the one small step one can begin with is to prepare your heart for forgiving. So once you prepare your heart for forgiving, then the situation I don't feel like, I'm not ready, will not come in. So your heart's
Okay.
approval is necessary. You don't need to take your approvals hard, because the heart just tells you to do it and you would do it. And that takes a little longer time. Your heart allowing you to forgive is it's a little time consuming process. So it is not that it will happen that you have a great change of heart tomorrow and you start forgiving. No. That's why we also say that time is the biggest healer in all this process.
Healer.
So one small step that I would look at is, once your heart has said and once your heart is ready to forgive, you will forgive, and it won't happen that you do not feel ready.
It's such a
Yeah.
gentle and empowering note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing such heartfelt reflections. It's a reminder that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, but about choosing peace over pain and letting go to grow. If this conversation stirred the people who are listening, I hope it inspires you to reflect on who or what you might need to forgive, including yourself. Thank you so much, Erambos, for being with us today and for sharing your thoughts so openly on something as personal as forgiveness. It's not always easy for one to talk about forgiving, but the way you brought honesty, warmth, and depth to the conversation really made it very, very meaningful. I'm sure a lot of people listening to us will take away something valuable and maybe even start looking at forgiveness a little differently. I truly appreciate your time and presence.
Thank you. Thank you very much.